Coming up,
should content be free?
There are cord cutters. There are people who refuse to pay for anything.
The free good stuff is what got the advertising industry in the bad shape that it's in to begin with.
Consumers don't want to pay you for the Marlboro Man. But then again,
But I think I just coaxed you more to my side of the argument.
No.
you're listening to The Pod Couple, where John Amisotti and Barbara Lippert debate all things media culture.
Welcome to another episode of The Pod Couple. I'm John Amisotti, here with my friend Barbara Lippert.
Hello, John. Great to be here.
Thanks, Barbara. And today we're going to talk a little bit about content. Specifically, there's a lot of stuff going on out there now with should it be pay to play? Should content be free?
Right.
We're pretty used to that in the advertising world, but now it's something that's obviously entering the entertainment world, content far and beyond. What do you think?
I think that there's so much stuff. It's really overwhelming. And I think free, if it's something new and you're going to choose it, you should make it free so that people will get into it. And if they love it, they're going to pay to enhance their experience.
I'm not okay.
That's like what Pokemon Go is doing, your favorite game.
Right.
And it was so funny. I was watching this on Netflix. There was a documentary about the 70s, and it was all about the birth of cable. And at the time they were saying, and so there's pay cable and then there's premium cable, but pay cable, and eventually you'll be able to choose an individualized menu of, and it seemed so futuristic.
Yeah. I'm going to start right out disagreeing with you on this one.
Go ahead.
For one, from a branding thing, the idea of starting with something free and hook people on it, and then they'll pay for it later. About the only thing I've ever heard that works on is heroin. And I'm not sure it really works in the world of content. And a couple other arguments. The free good stuff is what got the advertising industry in the bad shape that it's in to begin with. The creative was always free,
right?
Versus
because it paid the freight of the content.
Well, it was kind of the tchotchke in the cereal box that you made your money off the media placement and everything. So you got the advertising free. Well, now as the world has gone by, we've actually seen that the content is probably the thing of value, the great idea. You go back to something like the Marlboro Man created by Leo Burnett for Marlboro cigarettes. That was free, but that sold billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of product over the years. And you could argue the agency was never properly compensated for it the way they should have been. I'd find it very hard as a content provider, a script writer, anything like that to basically say my work should be free to somebody.
But then again, sponsored content, what you're talking about in the old days, advertising agencies sponsored shows, and now it's the same thing with, a brand sponsoring great content somewhere so that you can access it for free. I think that works well for advertisers.
Yeah, but in those days, that worked because they were the media buying companies, the agencies, so they made money that way.
Right, but I'm just talking from the consumer point of view. Consumers don't want to pay you for the Marlboro Man. They just get inundated with it.
True. True in that sense. I mean, I can understand that, but I think, when you get into something where there's no compensation for the people who make things, you get what you pay for.
Well,
ultimately.
That's what I'm saying. It's free for the consumer, which doesn't mean no compensation. People who are paying for it in the end, who are getting something out of it, product placement, whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, that again, it just sounds like there's no real plan on where the compensation comes from. I guess from being a practicing creative, and you are as a journalist, it's always easy to screw over the artist, and that's just been the history of all these businesses.
I agree, but does that mean that the consumer will pay for it?
They are. I mean,
Like in what examples?
Netflix. Do you
Right.
pay for your account? I pay
Yes,
for my account.
I think a service like Hulu kind of proves my point because it started back in 2007, and they've had a free option up until this year when it's all paid, and there's a lower fee for the ones with ads.
Right.
But that really gave people a taste, made them feel they couldn't live without it, and and if they do start charging, then they're in because they're already a member of the tribe.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it works for Inception, but again, they were one of the first ones doing this.
Yeah,
And
but 7 years is a long time to operate free.
7 years is
Yeah.
a long time, but now you have the others like Netflix, Acorn, Amazon Prime. There's
Yeah, they
others.
were all around for years. Yeah,
But I do think you're going to see now that now people are used to paying for the content and they get it. That probably means it will go away because there isn't really the barrier there now. They're like, yeah, you know what? If I see one or two things, if I see an original show that is really great that hooks me in, and almost all of them have something.
right. Well, what about something like Spotify?
Right. Well, I think on Spotify, maybe that's a part of the argument that I get into.
The artists suffer.
The artists suffer on that.
Yeah.
And, all this stuff's great, but
The internet has destroyed many businesses. Let's face it, but we're not going to turn that back.
No, but I do think any creative field, whether it's movies, whether it's the advertising industry, whatever, the artist has always been kind of treated as like a necessary evil.
Yeah.
That you do the product and whatever,
Yeah.
buddy. But we're the real brains of the operation, the numbers crunchers and the businessmen.
Oh,
and
well,
the
as an
account
artist,
guys.
I never felt
Right.
that way. But all artists are now in the gig economy, and it's terrible.
Right. So again, anything that protects them to be paid, I would
Yeah.
have to say I'm for. But
Yeah.
even
Right.
cable television, I mean, you'd have to argue, or it could be argued, content is so much better on cable, and you pay for that, and it's great shows like you'd find on HBO that would sell the entire package of the other things.
Right.
It was just free, and it actually also when you're paying for it, you can avoid a lot of commercials and stuff that people find they maybe don't necessarily like.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean,
I don't think there's any one answer. Just, I think
Right.
there are cord cutters. There are people who refuse to pay for anything. There are people who are willing to pay for stuff because they just love it and it's in an area they know they'll love. There are people who pay
Right.
for it and then regret it. There are all kinds of individualized plays on that.
there is that stuff, and I agree with that. I'm going to come back to one thing, and it's just like it's so easy for the artist who makes something to have that talent just overlooked. And
Yes.
I would give an example even from our own world, and you've probably had this happen to you too. One of my pet peeve things is if somebody has written a screenplay, a novel, of anything, and they'll come up and you'll hear this all the time. Hey, you know what? I'm doing something right now, and this will be really easy for you. I'd
Right.
really love you to take a look at ads that I did for my place, or I'd love you to read
Yeah.
my screenplay. And it's like, it's not easy for me.
Right.
It's also something that if it's easier for me than for you, it's because I spent years learning how to do something, and I don't do it. I
Right.
basically just
well,
find
it's
nice
even
ways.
worse in journalism where literally they want you to write for free and they
Right.
pay you an exposure, which doesn't pay your rent. And the
Right.
Huffington Post really started that. There's just no way to monetize the internet enough to pay writers what they were getting when it was in print.
But I think I just coaxed you more to my side of the argument. than it's like-
No, on that area. But thinking as a consumer
Right.
about, paying for something, it's very difficult to get people to pay for stuff. And you have to offer something as a way to get them in.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we can at least agree with that it's like, it's not a bad idea if you want to have it, if you can afford it to the promotion to give somebody a taste to get them in, but I don't think you can stay there
Right.
forever. And ultimately, I think we'd maybe even both agree you ultimately get what you pay for. at
Right.
some
And
point.
like the Wall Street Journal, you can get, or a lot of these magazines now, or Newsweek or Time, you get 10 free articles. And then if you really, really need it, you have to start paying. And I do sometimes.
Well, you also maybe open up the argument, is there a complete market that's not being served, that it's like you're going to pay from the start, but these are going to be the best content creators in the world are going to do this.
There were
super premium
my
content.
job at Goodby, which was curator of pop culture, which started in 2011, was way ahead of its time. We really do need curators now.
Right. That's true.
So I'm
a lot
available.
of stuff out there. There you go. But you do want to be paid. Let's make that clear.
Yes, absolutely.
On that, anything this week in particular that you're very interested in?
Yeah, there's a book that I'm really interested in. And again, for whatever reason, we seem to be in a 70s moment in the culture. And Jeffrey Toobin, people know him from CNN, and he's a lawyer. He just wrote a book about Patty Hearst called American Heiress. And that whole Symbionese army thing, where she was Tanya and she had a machine gun and a beret. I mean, I was obsessed with her as a teenager. And I had no idea, I heard him interviewed, that she actually, when she was living with an older professor, she was abused emotionally by him, and she thought that getting kidnapped would actually be a good way out. So she went willingly, and then she became this armed robber of banks, and then she married her security guard. So she was always looking for, male attention and somebody to tell her what to do, and then she turned out okay, and her kids are great. So it's a really interesting story. Plus, she came from one of the, beyond Trump families of megala bucks and power. So all of it is an interesting brew.
70s was a strange time for billionaire children. That's when J. Paul Getty's grandson was kidnapped, and I believe they took an ear off him or something.
Right, and we always love reading about these, these experiences behind bars or kidnapped or stolen away, because they, that's our ultimate fear, I think.
Right, poor little rich kids.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. My hot tip of the week probably is a little bit more lighthearted but fun. It kind of comes from the content world. My friend Ron Lazzaretti writes and produces an online series called The Graveyard Show. You can look it up, I believe, at graveyard.com, or just type in The Graveyard Show on Google. But a really great series. It's in its third season now. That really is just sort of a existential farce. Dave Pasquesi plays a nighttime security guard in a big nondescript office building. Christian Stolte from Chicago Fire plays a late-night janitor. And these guys just have very odd conversations about everything from the need or non-need to rotate where you put things in your refrigerator to keep them cool, to just everything, just all aspects of life.
The kind of stuff that just comes out at night where during the day you don't have time for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And these two guys are major talents anyway. Ron is a huge talent himself, but really a great thing. And I do think, Ron, you maybe beat my whole argument. I think it's free. So anyway,
I'll look for that, because that's always, I think there have been series before about night watchmen, and it's always amazing because everybody wants to know what's going on when you're sleeping.
What's happening. It's a really great show and worth your time. So with that, I think this episode comes to a close.
Yes.
Thanks very much for being here, and
totally
we'll see you again soon to bicker and argue.
Onward and upward.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks. For more Pod Couple, you can subscribe on iTunes. You can find us on YouTube. We're on Twitter at Pod Couple, and on Facebook. And we have a website, thepodcouple.com.
The Pod Couple is media experts John Amisotti and Barbara Lippert, produced by Eon Content Labs and brought to you by Epsilon. We see what others don't. All comments, discussions, materials, and information provided by participants in the Pod Couple are strictly their own opinion and do not constitute any official position or views of Epsilon. Please refer to our terms of use for more information.